How to make sure you never have another redundant or useless fragrance in your collection ever again. Today, guys, I'm making a sort of tutorial video where I'm sharing with you my 5 tips to make sure you are aiming for quality, not quantity in your collection. That's what we're always about in School of Scent. As fragrance collectors, we often go overboard with buying, especially in the early phases, and we find that some fragrances we just don't reach for. They're a little bit redundant and they just end up gathering dust. Why is that? So today I've got 5 reasons why I think that's the case, and hopefully these 5 tips helps you to avoid these traps. Let's begin. Tip number 1, be careful with cheap fragrances. Now, as a fragrance collector, in the early days, you often find yourself buying a lot of cheap scents. You find them cheap in store, you don't even know about how to test fragrances, you don't even care about sampling. You find that they're cheap, you blind buy, you get fragrances like Homme, Davidoff Cool Water, or Versace The Dreamer, which I'm holding here. These are very popular cheap scents. And you'll find on the School of Scent, fragrances that did used to get featured previously, like Davidoff's Cool Water Intense. I used to feature Tonka Voyage occasionally, I'm ashamed to say. They just don't get featured anymore because as your taste develops very quickly, actually, I would say, very early on and quickly, you find that you don't reach for these cheap scents anymore as much as you used to because they often smell synthetic, they just don't smell great quality, or they don't last that long, and you just find fragrances that have a similar fragrance family or style that are just done better for a slightly higher price. I do think some fragrances that are cheap are great, like Versace The Dreamer. I think this is a great scent, but again, I think most people actually won't like this, and you'll find that even though you think, okay, this is a great cheap find for a Versace fragrance, you'll find that most people just will not reach for this style. It's a very polarizing and particular kind of style. So that's what I'll say to you guys. Be careful with cheap fragrances. In the early stages, get a few, but don't go overboard, because I will say that your taste, your style will go to a higher price tag and higher quality very quickly. Don't buy too many fragrances that have a similar style to each other. I'm holding in my hand here Dior's Eau Sauvage Parfum from 2017 and Chanel's Pour Monsieur Eau de Parfum, which was from 2014, something like that. So these 2 fragrances have a similar idea of taking that traditional 20th century barbershop perfumery, those fougères, but making them more modern. So these are more modern in my opinion, but they smell traditional, classy, amber-based, so sweeter fougères that are professional and mature. I always reach for Eau Sauvage Parfum if I want this style. I don't reach for Pour Monsieur. So in my opinion, it kind of just feels redundant to own this fragrance, and you'll find it a lot with a lot of other fragrance pairings. So that's why we make our video series, you know, the fragrances that are redundant to purchase if you already own any of these. Some classic examples for me are things like Versace Pour Homme and Chanel's Allure Homme Sport, the original, or Sauvage Elixir and Oud for Greatness, or even pairings like the original Spicebomb and Bvlgari's Man in Black. So what I'm saying is these fragrances aren't necessarily clones, but they have a very similar style, and usually both fragrances are quite popular as well. And I find that if you just have too many fragrances of a similar style, you'll just end up picking your one that's your favorite and neglecting the rest, which is fair enough, it's understandable. So don't go for too many fragrances of one style. If you love a particular style, like barbershop perfumery, for example, maybe go for 3 max is what I say. Don't overdo it. Try to get more variety of fragrance styles and families in your collection. And make sure you watch that series I mentioned about the videos we upload regarding redundant fragrance purchases. 32% of people who watch School of Scent are subscribed to us. If you guys want to see our channel grow, to really help us out, click subscribe. Let's get that number to 40%. Thank you. Concept number 3, beware the reformulation. So Fougère d'Argent by Tom Ford, I think, is the only fragrance I own 2 bottles of in my collection. This is a fragrance I fell in love with many years ago. So I tried it back in 2019, I think. I really fell in love with the style, traditional Fougère perfumery, but very beastly, long-lasting, smooth and creamy, really classy and cool scent. I really liked it, I love the style. And then I bought a replacement online many years later, and I got disappointed. It doesn't smell as rich anymore. One of these bottles anyways doesn't smell as rich, and it doesn't last as long either. So for me, I was very disappointed. I ended up having to locate an older bottle from 2018. So one of these is a 2018 bottle. It smells much better like what I remember it smelling like. And I think this is just an issue in general that people need to be aware of. Reformulations do happen. In my opinion, I'm playing devil's advocate. I do think it's mainly because of changes in allergen listings and regulations in the industry that happen every few years. So formulas do just change naturally. And you'll find that fragrances that you used to love, especially classics like Green Irish Tweed or Fahrenheit, you loved them back in the old days. Maybe your old bottles now finally run out, you want to get a replacement. Go in store and try modern day samples, because you might find that you don't like the modern day reformulations anymore. Another famous example is YSL's La Nuit de l'Homme. It's had many years to build up its reputation. People love it. It's a great classic DNA, but it's also notorious for being heavily reformulated. So don't just see the great reviews online and go ahead and buy it. Go try it in store, because a lot of these fragrances just aren't what they used to be. Concept number 4, be careful of the weird fragrance ideas. So I'm holding Mancera's Tonka Cola in my hand right here. Objectively, I'd give this fragrance a 9 out of 10. It's a cool idea, cool blends, cool notes. It smells like a boozy cherry Coca-Cola with a musky Tonka base. Really cool, unique idea that lasts a really long time. It's versatile as well, and I think it suits a particular kind of individual. Probably not me though, and that's why I'm warning you in this concept. Be careful with weird fragrance ideas. Something else might be traditional gourmands as well, like Chocolate Greedy by Montale. These are fragrances that are cool, but you just don't know if they suit you as a personality, and also you don't really know when to wear these strange ideas. And that's how you find that often you just don't reach for them, and they end up being kind of left in the corner of your collection gathering dust. They're still cool to try out, see if they suit you. You know, some other weird scents might be like Moschino's Toy Boy, which I really like. I would happily wear that, but these kind of fragrances are more tricky. You shouldn't own too many of these in my opinion, unless they really suit your style. Another example might be YSL's Kuros. I love that fragrance, but again, it's so weird and so different by today's standards that you may not end up reaching for it. And the final tip, be careful of fragrance clones. So this might be a controversial take, but I find people buy clone fragrances often because of the fact that they feel like they're getting a bargain. You'll find that a lot of these Middle Eastern houses specialize in cloning popular designer fragrances from Western brands. For example, here I have Lattafa's Asad, which is a clone of Sauvage Elixir. And you find that there's a lot of hype for certain clones, like for Asad. You see great reviews for it. It's so cheap. I think it is incredible value for money, and I actually prefer this over Sauvage Elixir because I feel that this is just more easy to wear. However, my argument is that if you are not saving up for an original idea or an original fragrance to the point that you'd rather get a clone, do you even enjoy that original DNA that much? Because in my experience, I would just arbitrarily say that at least 80% of the time, clone fragrances don't match the originals. I don't hype clone fragrances really at all. I don't like them that much. I don't explore them that much. They don't really excite me, although there's endless amounts coming out all the time. I don't really care for them. Most of the time, the vast majority of the time, I'd rather just save up and buy the original. And if you do not like the original DNA that much to the point where you'd rather just see if you can get a quick bargain with a clone, I will say, you know, are you actually going to reach for this? Do you like the DNA that much? Just go get the original in the vast majority of cases. Yes, in the rare case here or there, the clone really does make the original redundant, but if you're looking at clones, do you like the original that much is my argument. And yes, you can argue if you do love an original DNA loads, and you really do want it, but you really can't afford it. Okay, if you really can't save up at all, then fair enough, go for good clones that do the DNA justice, in my opinion. But overall, similar to what I was saying about cheap fragrances in the first tip, these cheap clones can be very tempting and you can end up buying a lot of them, adding them to your collection. But again, do you actually love the DNA? I would say be careful here. And that concludes my 5 tips to make sure you never have another redundant or unnecessary fragrance in your collection ever again. Do you agree or disagree with the tips I've shared here today, guys? And do you think they're the only 5 tips needed for this subject? What other tips would you provide to someone to make sure they only have quality, not quantity in their collection? Share your submission in the comments down below, guys. And if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to check out our previous video I was mentioning about redundant fragrance purchases. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.